Welcome to the session 14 of the novel The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. In this session, I'm going to analyze chapter 22 and chapter 23. Now, let us see chapter 22. As they entered the vestibule of the apartment building, Marian, who had taken off her clothes, slipped her hand into a coat pocket and turned her engagement ring halfway around her finger. She did not think it would be courteous to the roommates, who had misunderstood with such touching concern to flaunt the enlightening diamond too ostentatiously. Then she took the ring off altogether. Then she thought, what am I doing? By now, they had gone up the stairs and were at the door of the apartment, which was opened before Duncan had touched the handle by Trevor. He fixed his pale blue eyes inquiringly on Marian. Marian, Duncan said. Oh, yes, said Trevor. I don't think we have met formally, really. He smiled and a dimple appeared in each cheek. Marian left her boots and the newspapers outside the door, and Duncan took her coat into the bedroom. She did not want to sit in Trevor's purple chair, nor in Duncan's green one. That would create a problem for Duncan when he came out of the bedroom, nor on the floor among the papers. She might be disarranging someone's thesis. Finally, she balanced herself on one of the arms of Duncan's chair, folding her hands on her lap. He did not break his pace even when Trevor, who was busily removing the shrimp cocktail dishes, set his soup plate in front of him, though he opened his eyes long enough to pick up his soup spoon after a preliminary trial with his fork. They may not approve of it, they are very conservative around here, but even if they turn it down, I can always write it up for one of the journals. No human thought is ever wasted. Here Duncan speaks about his thesis and the thumb paper which he is writing. What I have in mind is something quite revolutionary. Malthus and the creative metaphor, Malthus being, of course, merely a symbol for what I want to get at, that's the inescapable connection between the rise of the birth rate in modern times, since the past 2 or 3 centuries, especially the 18th to the middle of the 19th, and the change in the ways the critics have been thinking about with poetry, the consequent change in the way poets have been writing it. And oh, I could safely extend the thing to cover all the creative arts. Fish was continuing, you see, as long as the population per square mile ago especially was low and the infant mortality rate and the death rate in general was high, there was a premium on birth. Trevor sprang up and dashed around the table, removing the soup plates. Marian glanced at Fish. Trevor made an entrance with clean plates and another exit. She could hear him fidgeting about in the kitchen, the background of Fish's voice, and so then, consequently, the poet also thought of himself as the same kind of natural producer. There was a fizzling sound, and Trevor appeared dramatically in the doorway, holding the flaming blue sword in either hand. Marian was the only person who even looked at him. Trevor poured the wine, explaining how hard it was to find really fresh tarragon in this city. At that moment, the chunk of meat which Marian had just hurled was in the mid-air. It caught Duncan squarely in the side of the head and deflected, bounced across the floor, and landed on a pile of term papers. Marian threw the meat towards Duncan as she could not eat it. Trevor, a small salad dish in either hand, had stepped through the doorway just in time to witness both events. At last, I know what I really want to be, Duncan said into the suddenly quiet room. Duncan had said he would walk her part way home. He needed a breath of fresh air, and the table had been straightened, and Fisher had subsided, muttering to himself. Trevor had gracefully dismissed the whole incident, though for the remainder of the meal, through the salad and the peaches flambés and the coconut cookies and the coffee and liqueurs, his manner to Marian had been cooler. Duncan sat down on the snow bank at one side and lit a cigarette. The thing is, he said after a while, I would like to I would like something to be real. Besides, maybe my food's unreal anyway. He threw the stub of his cigarette into the snow and lit another. I mean, if you went to the bed, God knows you are unreal enough now. All I can think of is those layers and layers of woolly clothes you wear, coats and sweaters, and so on. Maria could not resist this appeal. She knew she was not woolen. All right, suppose we did, she said, speculating, and we can't go to mine, Duncan said, showing neither surprise nor glee at her implied acceptance. I guess we would have to go to the hotel, she said. Yes, married people. They would never believe it, he said sadly. No, she said, a little indignantly. I couldn't do that. I probably couldn't either, he said in a gloomy voice. But then, again, he said with a mild bitterness, maybe I'm incorruptible. Marian was looking out over the baseball park, but she knew that in a minute she would be walking sedately, yes, ever across it towards the station. Duncan stood up too and put his hands into his pockets. No, he said. When she had reached the bright pastel oblong of the subway station, Marian took out her change purse and retrieved her engagement ring from among the pennies, nickels, and dimes. Now, chapter 23 Analysis. Marian was resting on her stomach, eyes closed, an ashtray balanced in the hollow of her bare back where Peter had set it. It had been such a comfort knowing she could rely on it. It provided bulk, and as Mrs. Smithers, the dietitian, had said, it was for fortified. He seemed to find it normal, and what was essentially bothering her was the thought that she might not be normal. This was why she was afraid to tell Peter he might think she was some kind of freak or neurotic. Marian thought wouldn't be much use in a case. The office virgins would be intrigued and would want to hear all about it, but she did not think they would be able to give her any constructive advice. Besides, if she told one, they would all know, and soon everyone they knew would know. You could never tell how it might get back to Peter. They would all think it is bad taste for Marian to have anything wrong with what they would call her natural functions. She decided to go to Clara and see her. It was a faint hope. Surely Clara wouldn't be able to offer any concrete suggestions, but at least she would listen. Marian telephoned her to make certain she would be in and left work early. She handed Clara her cup over the bars. Well, said Clara, when Marian had settled herself on the rug so as to be on the same level, how is everything? Looking at looking at her sitting in there with the baby chewing on the buttons of her blouse, Marian found herself being envious of Clara for the first time in 3 years. Whatever was going to happen to Clara had already happened. She had turned into what she was going to be. It was not that she wanted to change places with Clara, she only wanted to know what she was becoming, what direction she was taking, so she could be prepared. She was hungry, she had not had much of dinner, so she unboxed the cake she had bought that afternoon on the way from Clara's. The day before had been Valentine's Day, and Peter had sent her a dozen roses. She had felt guilty, thinking she had to have given him something but not knowing what. She got out two of Peter's plates and two forks and two paper napkins. She shuddered and out into a spat cake, then napkins and scrapped her plate into after that she wiped garbage. She walked into the bedroom carrying Peter's drink and the plate. It would be a test not for Peter but for herself. If he couldn't eat his either, then she was normal. He took the plate and the glass from her and set them on the floor. Later, Marian was resting on her stomach with an ashtray balanced in the hollow of her back. She was watching Peter eat. He ate the cake without any complaint. Thank you for watching the video.